we are recording. And as Eric has introduced me before, since I am the co-host, I'm going to have some fun and be the main host today. And let's get to know Eric a little bit more on today's episode. So, again, one of my roles here, Chris Mateo, is one of the co-hosts here. That's one of my roles. But the next thing is, as a producer, I need to catch Eric on some things that will need correcting, some things that will need, I don't know, public apologies, or we'll need to send letters out to people. But
Because
today
I
I
be
want to
ranting.
start off. He'll rant, and we love you for it, but we do have to backtrack sometimes, and that's going to be one of my jobs. But the very first one I want to start off with is making sure people know that Eric does know the difference between two very important terms that were brought up during our interview a couple of episodes ago. But I'll let Eric kind of distinguish this and share what the correction is that we need to make. And this was
because I was re-listening to our episode just to kind of continuation, this episode, because I know we were gonna be reconnecting. So I was re-listening to kind of like continue our conversation, kind of. But then I realized that throughout all of my references to Palestine, I said Hamas, and I know the difference, guys. Free Palestine, okay? Free Palestine. I understand. I am brown as hell. You know that I understand about the colonized side. I am not. I understand. Okay. So free Palestine. I know the difference between Hamas and Palestine. So if you heard that episode and you were like, this motherfucker don't know what he's talking about, understand that I do. It's just I be ranting sometimes. And when I get emotional, I be saying the wrong words. That's all.
We get it.
We can always come back and we'll hit you back next week and have the corrections is what I will say.
We've got that. We've all been through Freudian slips here and there, So,
no, but you just said that your kid was is home because of the protests, right?
Yes. So UC Santa Cruz, where he's going to school, announced while he was still here at the end of the week or on the weekend, they just said, hey, due to the protests and everything happening on campus, things will be virtual now. And so he's like, all right, I guess I'm not going back to Santa Cruz. So he's here in Sacramento up until tomorrow. So so they want to make sure everybody's safe, which I respect. But this is all over the UCs, and Santa Cruz has already taken steps. Their grad students have already protested, and so this has affected the whole campus. And so everybody's working virtually this week. And so, unfortunately for us, since we're moving, I'm happy he's here because I need an extra hand to move stuff out of our garage and into our new house. More importantly, than
it's good.
What's going on? Yeah. So,
all right, man. Well, I mean, we can get this party started if you want to go ahead and start asking me whatever you want to ask me, because I'm an open book. I'll answer any question.
Yeah, no, I love it. And before anything else, though, you bring this up so often. We're so appreciative of this. But to shout out why we're here in the first place, we got this here as proof that the reason Eric and I connected in the first place was when we had begun the Filipino Americans for Biden campaign in 2020 under the leadership of Mark Polito and Melissa Ramoso. We were able to bring in Eric to help us out, to spread the word, connect with our Filipino American brethren, get them all ready to vote, and we did it, right? And we're here to try this again, and then some. Though I think that's the beauty
because
of
us that he won, bro. It's us. I
think that's implied.
Yeah,
that's implied. He knows.
You're welcome.
He knows. Yeah,
you're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, you're welcome.
Yeah. During API Heritage Month, he's like, "Thank you, APIs," but what he's really saying is, "Thank you, Eric and Chris." And we're like, "Dude, just leave it alone. Like, we get it. We feel appreciated, Joe.
We're cool. Just subscribe to the podcast, man. It's all good.
That's all we need to know. And then join as a guest maybe at the end of this season. That's our season finale. We'll have Joe Biden on here. So stay tuned, everyone.
That would be pretty damn cool if that was the case. That would be pretty cool if we had the president on. And he was the president, because God forbid the other outcome that could happen. I feel that fool's going to be in jail anyway. By the time November rolls around, I feel like Stormy's going to. And once this guy, Judge Merchan, who's overseeing the case, the Stormy Daniels case.
Yeah.
Come on, man. He's probably going to be in jail by the time I'd say summer, because they already closed. They're closing, so I don't know that jury is going to. I mean, there's 2 lawyers in that jury, so I feel like it's not going to be deliberation for too long. We'll see what happens, but fingers crossed, homie's going to be in jail before.
Yeah,
and he has a way of avoiding the consequences a lot, like a lot of folks. That's a lot of folks. That's what cancel culture is at the end of the day, right? It's just people who have never received consequences before, and now, oh my God, you're trying to cancel me. No, we're just giving you critique, and you're dealing with whatever the hell you said.
Like my wife and I always joke, we saw this bumper sticker and it just said, well, is it, if it isn't the consequences of my actions? And we're just like, that just needs to be everywhere, because that's cancel culture. Like, what's your responsibility? What's your accountability? And it's like, it's funny to laugh at, but realistically, people are like, oh, why are they canceling? It's like, because you did a bad thing. Like, let's call it what it is. You can't be this bad person. We've got
you can't
kids
act belligerently and not think you're going to get a clap back. That's basically what it's about. Like, not now I'm going to sound like an old man, but at the same time, like, you raise a generation with participation awards and everybody wins. Well, part of learning and growing up is losing. Even Michael Jordan, he said it, part of the reason that I win is because I missed so many shots and all this other. It was a famous commercial that I can pull the news clipping of the dialogue of the article that I clipped and keep with me all the time, because you have to face adversity. That's part of it. Yeah. You have to be wrong in order to understand, learn, evolve, and then eventually, hopefully, be right, because you've made so many mistakes in the past that you don't want to make those mistakes anymore. And now you've learned, and now hopefully you apply logic and all the other things that you do to make decisions. But the internet has made it too easy for people to say stupid shit and not deal with ramifications, because their followers who are already following them and their way of thinking and whatever they're tweeting out or truthing out or whatever other app you're using to put your message out there and put your content out there. It's really ridiculous. And I come from the days of when you said something stupid, they smacked your ass in the face. You know what I mean? Yeah. And not to say I'm not talking about having violence or anything like that, or my whole first one-man show, which I'm now applying to become probably put in and finagle and cut and paste and copy and do some stuff to be my third special. But that is all about growing up and getting smacked in the face, and you have to learn to kind of brush yourself off and deal with it, and either fight back or know when to fucking run and know when you're not going to be winning in the situation. You're about to get your ass beat, and you might want to survive instead of prove who's tougher. So
either way, I don't know, man. Be better. You got to be better, right? I mean, like, either way, if you messed up, be better next time, or if you did great, good, applaud it. But I will use that nice segue from you talking about your third special eventually, that why we're here, why I'm here. I need to point out, when I talk about you to people, I remind them first and foremost, you were a political science major. You love this stuff. You love talking about politics. That's how we were connected. But the reason we reconnected recently is because I'm on this new journey. And just real briefly, this isn't about me, but I want to talk about comedy.
Don't briefly go into that shit. Come on, man. Talk about it.
All right,
we're podcasting. That's the point of this shit.
Yeah. So real quickly, 20 years ago, I was going to be a sitcom writer. My wife and I had a baby, and she said, like, put that on hold. Let's start this family, and we'll revisit it once he's older. Long story short, he's older, and now I'm ready to write again. And as I was ready to write and sit down and say, like, what does this comedy thing look like? Is it even realistic? I said, hey, I know an amazing stand-up comedian, a Filipino American stand-up comedian, great guy, same values. He's a dad. Like, what do I learn from this guy to do this right? Like, I don't want to just be out there. I don't want to just be like a stand-up comedian. I don't want to just write a sitcom. I want to be smart about it. I want to know that this is, exuding my values, showing like what the Filipino American experience is. I want to talk about these important things that you and I talk about. And so I said, what can Erick teach me? And I reached out. I said, hey, Erick, what can you teach me about comedy? And he said, like, hey, I'm doing this podcast. Let's reconnect. Let's make this happen. And so you have been an inspiration. You have been a guiding light for me, and just somebody where, when in doubt, put it out to the universe and amazing things happen. Or the inverse, the universe like, no, this isn't right for you. And Erick could have just easily hung up, but I told him what I wanted to do. And so we're here. And so in terms of comedy, in terms of what you've been through and how we connect, I want to know like your start. I want to know why comedy for you. What got you to this point, decades later, and going through Second City and all these amazing things and your 2 specials. Like, what was that start like? What was that spark like for you to get into comedy and get to where you are now?
Some of that got broken up. I think our Wi-Fi is a little shaky, which is all right. Say that all again a little bit, like say just a question again real quickly, because it's where the question that you kind of broke up. So just say that again so that the listeners get the question, because I know what you're asking. So I kind of, but yeah, definitely just so the listeners can get it again, because it was really kind of spotty with the audio on the thing, and I'm trying to figure out how to fix that with this. But at the end of the day, we're good for now.
Okay. Yeah. So really, the question is, how did you get into comedy? Why was comedy what was that spark for you to get into comedy from, your early days, from Second City, from being in Chicago to now where, you've done your specials, you're on this podcast, you're, like Mini Pacquiao, everything in between. And like, what was it for you? Why was comedy your calling?
I was thinking about this when the audio was breaking up, and I'm still thinking about it, because comedy is just what came naturally to me. Like from the moment that I watched Eddie Murphy Delirious when I was like 9 or 10 years old, maybe even 11. I recorded it on a cassette tape, and I say it in Miscellaneous Brown in my first special. I talk about how in like my 5th grade, I listened to it, and I walked to school with my Walkman, and I just listened to Eddie Murphy Delirious over and over again on my cassette tape. And like little did I know that I'd be a stand-up comedian. Now I'm 50 years old and I'm still doing it, but part of it is the infectious, like even when I just make my daughters laugh, how good that makes me feel, or even if we're one-on-one having a conversation, and I feel like that's the hardest laugh to get. If you can be talking to somebody one-on-one and you can make them bust, that's a different kind of level of comedian to me, because you're almost forcing your comedy on that person. And if they don't like it or don't want to receive it, or it's not funny, because I've been in that position where I've tried to joke out on somebody. I didn't think my joke was that funny, and they were like, and I was like, oh, okay, you're not my audience. Thank you. Okay. but it's just, I like to make people smile. I like to look at the brighter side of things. My comedy mantra is yes and. So yes, let's intake it. Let's positively take it in and look at the positive in it, and then try to make it funny in our way, in our own personal, from our own perspective and imagination, and then give it to the world.
I love that. I love that. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I love that,
No,
especially when
I don't want it to get to audio. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
The smile, that simple, yeah, we can have the laughter, the joy, the positivity, but you just saying like just that smile, like just somebody to be able to make them smile, because we're in a world where sometimes it's not even that easy to just like break a smile with everything going on, right? I mean, like to be able to exude that and elicit that from somebody, especially the one-on-one. I love the one-on-one perspective, because yeah, there are a lot of times where that's the immediate feedback you get. Like I think that's why I feel it's a similar calling, like to be able to make that one person smile, that one person laugh. But it is hard because like if they're not and they're not in that place and they don't give you that feedback right away, you're like, what am I doing this for? Why did I even try to attempt this? But when it does happen, it's 1,000 times better than seeing that one person just, like they don't crack that smile. They're worried about something. They've got that anxiety, and you're like, what can I do to kind of relieve that, even for a second, even for a day? How do we get them past that? And so, my next question, I think, is as from the lens of a father. You and I talk about this a lot in terms of being dads. What is that like at home being a comedian? I want to know what that's like with, do you test your jokes out on them? Do you have bits? Does it drive your wife crazy? Like, what's that like being a comedian at home?
I kind of have a joke that I haven't told on stage yet, just because I feel like it's like a comedy special joke. So it's probably going to be the third special, because I'm kind of starting to put that together now in my head, just because I know they're editing the second one. So I'm kind of trying to figure out the third one, because that's always, it's just like a musician. You have, okay, I got one album out, now I got another album out. I want to hit them with another one until one of them hits. So my youngest daughter, Marley, writes, she wrote one of the closing jokes that I told for my special. Okay. And it's raunchy as hell. It's a really funny ass, like she's raunchy. And, because I at the end of the day for my kids, it's the same with kind of how I was raised in English and political science, and how important words are. Theater, words are, I did Shakespeare. So words are ridiculously important, but they're also not something to be afraid of. So you just got to know when and where to use the words, right? Whatever the words are. So for my kids, when it comes to comedy, I allow them here in the house. They know that they can't speak the way daddy speaks at school. They're smart enough to understand, because they understand that words, sometimes words, the power of words, sometimes the words mean something else in school than they do when we laugh at it at home. It's different. But as far as like I'll give you a tease of one of the jokes that my Marley wrote. And so we were watching Eternals. Okay. And this is in the special. I don't know if it's in the special, but I know that I did it in Chicago and told this joke on stage. And so we're watching Eternals from Marvel, right? The C+ of the Marvel universe. Unfortunately, that wasn't really my favorite. But at the same time, at the end of the movie, when Icarus does this betrayal move to the whole team, I go, I'm still into Marvel. I love comic books. So I was like, dick move, Icarus. We were watching it at home. I wasn't talking in the theater. I was like, dick move, Icarus. And then Marley chimes in and says, yeah, Icarus, you're a big, heavy dick. And I was like, oh my God, I've never heard a dick described as heavy before. That's amazing. I'm going to write that shit down, Marley. That was awesome. You're welcome for this comedic genius that I have birthed into the world, or helped birth into this world and raised into this world. Because she came up with the term, whenever you describe your dick as heavy, from now on, just know who came up with it. My 6-year-old daughter, Marley Garcia.
I love
when she was 6 is when she did it. My oldest is right now going, she's like 8, 9, and your sister's 9 right now, or 10. But she was 6 when she said it. It was like 2 years ago. Eternals is a long time ago. Your skew of time is very, very long because you're a child. Anyway, you see how I have to deal with, I'm dadding right now on the podcast.
Yeah. It's a 24-hour job, but yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you're right. The word choice to think of that, and the timing, I'm sure, was just timing.
That was the thing, because she made us all bust the fuck. Oh, I mean, we all just were like, what the fuck did you just? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. You're funny. But now like it's also funny because now she like now that she knows she's funny, she like tries to be funny. So I gotta
Okay.
check her almost like
Oh yeah.
no, that ain't it, girl. No, that's not funny.
Yeah. No, I get that. No,
Like, and
I
I even had the N-word conversation with her because we've been listening to Kendrick a lot. And she's like,
oh,
Daddy, what does that word mean? And she said it. And I was like, yo, hold on. There are words that we don't say. Just because it's better that we don't say it, because if you're in the wrong room and somebody says that, you don't say that. And we had the discussion of the N-word and the importance and the significance of it and how hip hop can use it because certain people in hip hop are Black people and you've been called all the different, you know, not eccentricities and the different details of that word. It's a very delicate subject, so I try. That's the one word that I kind of try to avoid because most of my everything, because I was thinking about, because some of the questions you thought about, like what drives you, and of course my kids, my wife, my family, but also the civil rights movement of the 60s.
okay.
I was born just removed from that. I grew up, I was a latchkey kid in the 70s and 80s. So I grew up watching Different Strokes and Good Times and the Jeffersons and, all these African American TV culture of the 70s and 80s raised me. I watched the Brady Bunch too, but I'm more identified with Good Times because it was somebody, they lived in Chicago, even though it was, I drove past and went and rode on the train and saw that part of town all the time. So it wasn't like I wasn't afraid of it necessarily, but I also understood that it wasn't necessarily a place you'd want to hang out, especially at that time. So,
Yeah.
but it was still, a big part. And then hip hop came along and, I was hooked. And then I went to high school and I got to go to school with and meet actual African Americans and actually become friends with them and then, meet other. I mean, high school was like my awakening in as far as culturally speaking, but then even college went even further than that because then I was able to identify with my Filipino American side because college allows you to kind of like delve deeper into the Filipino American history that they don't tell you in grammar school, because you can make that effort because they have the resources. Even at that time when there wasn't an internet and the world was, you could, I would read books, I was one of them. Like, this is an old hat from the 90s that my sister, or from the early aughts that my sister bought me because I was so militant, hip hop Filipino, where where I'd be listening to hip hop and reading Asian American history books. So that was me in the 90s and early aughts.
So that's amazing. With college, did you already see yourself like in these spaces and making people laugh as more than just joking with a few people, or did that come later on? Like, what was college like in terms of being exposed to so many, again, with your influences from hip hop for sure, but all these sitcoms that started coming up, and then being around a very diverse population? Like, was your comedy being formed at this time? Was it something that was like at the forefront of your mind in terms of what's next for me in my career or after college, or did that come later on?
Um, I'll tell you, I like most Filipinos in the late 90s. I was in a boy band in college.
Oh,
I was in an a cappella boy band in college that made no damn sense. We were called Word for Word. Word for Word was the name, okay? Because we sang covers of shit, right? But we were word for word, but then there were 5 motherfuckers in the group. It didn't make any sense at all. It was stupid. But yeah, no, that was my first taste at the stage. And
okay.
I can carry a tune. I'm not a bad singer. I'm a karaoke superstar. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I was able to carry a tune and enjoy myself in college and do a few musicals in my early my 20s and in theater. But yeah, it was that boy band in college that kind of got me because it made because I got to sing. I sang some songs and girls started screaming. You know what I mean? Like, I was on stage and the girls were screaming, and I was like, I remember like a Champagne Urbana fashion show where word for word saying we all wore black leather jackets on stage and we were singing the songs. And we had wrote one original song because Joey Bangett, one of the singers, was a really good, one of the members was a really good piano player. So he wrote a song for us, the first, the last, the only, or whatever the hell it was. I can't remember the lyrics, but we sang that song for like Champagne Urbana fashion show, the Philam fashion show. And oh my God, it was amazing. It was like, I felt like Justin Timberlake, or like, like it was like that kind of thing. But I don't even think Justin Timberlake was a thing. No, it was like 96, 97. No, 95, 96 probably. So that wasn't even, Justin Timberlake was still in the Mickey Mouse Club at that point. So, but it was like a Boys to Men. I felt like Filipino boys to Pinoys. That was it. That's what it was.
Who's the one that made it national? Was it Kai? Kai
there was Kai.
The
there's a few others. There's been a few others subsequent, and there's a few.
We have
Kai was the first one.
I don't know if you remember Touch, but I know one of their band members here is the dad of my son's friend from high school. And so we see him all the time. This guy's just super talented. He plays at church. I'm like, this guy's really good. We're like, wait, he's from that boy band, that Filipino boy band Touch, that they played for Clinton back in the day. It was like, man.
That's what I'm saying. Like we forget about how good, and the because it's always the next big thing with us in the Filipino community, which is unfortunate. Like I was just thinking about, like, even not to bring up bad shit, but like Cassie.
Oh yeah, that was
Puffy's unfortunate wife for 10 years, and all the abuse that she endured. And we were all about, when we, me and you, we're singing that song all day. Did you know she's Filipina? She's half Filipina. Oh my God, she's half. I've not seen one Filipino mention the fact that Cassie, who was, again, the victim of this horrible monster at the end of the day. I mean, and I grew up in the 90s, man. I grew up, during the Biggie and Tupac, the West Coast. I mean, like, Puffy was like a hero to a lot of us in hip hop. So this whole thing where everybody's crumbling, it's all crumbling down. It's a little weird, but at the same time, like, I would, if nobody else from the Filipino American community is going to mention it, I'm just, we're here for you, Cassie, because I mean, we know that she was even identifying during the time when her song and album was popular, with the community. So, I feel for you, and hopefully you get through this, and hopefully you get paid a lot of money, because you endured a lot of shit, and take all that money away from that asshole, I would say. And then, I don't know. It just, I think we have to have a conversation a lot, I think, on this podcast, and I think with, different leaders in our community, about how we digest and then, figure out and process celebrity within and without our community. And I think that's what part of this podcast is about, part of what Kanakuyas is about, part of all the podcasts that are about, is because I'm realizing that as a comedian, we are kind of the philosophers of our time. If we want to be, if you want to have something of substance when it comes to your art and the craft and the message that you're trying to get out. So part of me is trying to re-examine that. Like, even in the last episode, if you listen to it, about the culture vulture stuff, and how, how we allow our culture to be used and profited and monetized, but then who's the one who's profiting and monetizing it? Is it us, or is it other people? So, those are questions that I want to ask, but those are also questions that I want to ask of the politicians that we bring on the show, because, they're the leaders. So what do they think of that stuff? What, like, I was talking to Robbie after it, because I didn't want to like spring it on them, but at the same time, these people who are profiting, like, if you just Google the word Tagalog, and it's like, aren't there supposed to be Filipino people on these links to be teaching people Tagalog? How come it's all Caucasian people? It's a little weird. So, I just want to bring a little bit of light to that, but also, because representation at the end of the day, that's one of my ultimate things with comedy. It was why I did Second City for as long as I did, and why I left. And the same reason for Groundlings, and the same reason for a lot of places where I did comedy and learned their art, like martial art. I learned this kung fu, and then I learned this jujitsu, and then I learned this aikido or whatever, and then I took it and I tried to create my own, because representation matters. And if you don't get or understand my Filipino American comedy, or the Filipino American references, or the Taglish accent, or the Tagalog that I use, because I speak Tagalog, my family spoke Tagalog, or even like Cebuano or Ilocano, or all the other different dialects that I hope to, at least internalize a little bit, so that I can at least understand when they're greeting me or whatever else. Because, I watched the movie Super Psycho Cebu, luckily enough to meet the filmmakers of that movie. And it was like the first Filipino pothead movie, and how they were, in a lot of ways, they have to live here now because they're living here under asylum, because their movie about cannabis, something that I advocate for, drove them out of in fear of their lives because of the I can never say the Duterte. I just got to say Duterte administration. I can't say the Duterte, because as a Chicagoan, I always say duh. So it's like duh. And but the Duterte administration forced them to move to America. They're, and they don't like me to talk about the details of it because it's still in litigation. So, but that's the trip when art meets politics for me. And I really, it's stuff that we don't talk about. And I'm glad that we can talk about it, because it's going to be a thing that I hopefully will, stir the pot and create more conversations in other different Filipino American communities that hear this.
Of course. And then, and going back, I mean, I'm glad that you touched on this, but in terms of your comedy and with the Filipino aspect, I kind of want to get your thoughts on, you don't have to go all the way back, but I'm always curious about the perspective of a Filipino American comedian, and how you and I have talked about this with regards to, just so everybody knows, we will be writing a Filipino American sitcom that will make it on the air one day. But in terms of that perspective as a Filipino American comedian, what does that look like? And as you produce your jokes, as you're walking this, you and I talked about straddling this line of people that may or may not understand these jokes, but we want to get them on board. Like, how do you kind of prepare for that, knowing that your audience isn't going to be primarily Filipino, but you do want to include them on the joke, even if they don't know? How do you get them there? How do you, become like part of that culture for them to understand it at some point? What does that process kind of look like for you as a comedian, producing these types of jokes and knowing what your audience looks like or doesn't look like?
It's funny. You can watch my specials. You can watch Miscellaneous Brown. And for me, here's what I'll say. I love that special. It's my favorite. It's the culmination of like 8 years of writing and doing jokes and learning how to become a stand-up comedian. But the audience is full of, I feel like every Chicago Filipino showed up to that show, which is wonderful. But it looks like I'm doing a show for my cousins.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I remember.
Like,
yeah.
It looks like I'm like a family reunion.
Yeah.
It's like I almost like I juice the crowd with people that I know that were going to be favorable no matter what, almost, right? And not to say that that's how I feel the performance went or anything like that. I felt like I didn't know I knew like the comics and my homie taking pictures and the people who were producing. I didn't know anybody in that thing except for like maybe 5 people. But that said, it was very Filipino. You know what I'm saying? Like there's Tagalog in it. There's, I reference Tagalog Kurt, and I reference, I reference what's his name? Bretman Rock. And I kind of talk about how, I allude to the fact that Rex Navarrete is in my DMs about how I stole his Ewok joke, when that's nobody's joke. That's a fact from the Return of the Jedi that nobody owns except for the Lucasfilm and Disney at this point. So, nobody owns that fact, but no other Filipino American comedian also said that they would be the Filipino American Jedi. And then subsequently in my second special say, I'm going to be I'm deciding that the trajectory of the franchise is not for a Jedi. I'd rather be the first Filipino Mandalorian, and I break that down. This is the way, okay? But you know what I'm saying? Like it's easy. You can just write yes and yes and yes and keep writing jokes about it, you know? But it's part of like being a Filipino American comedian, and I've been doing it from jump. We've talked about this. Like the only reason I stopped doing Mini Pacquiao was because I didn't want to get famous from doing Mini Pacquiao, because I knew I was going to get famous because I was already traveling across the country doing Mini Pacquiao sketches, because I know those were funny. You can go back and watch them. They're funny. They still hold up today. I watch them. They're funny. Right. But I knew when somebody was telling me to pose for Mini Pacquiao at a funeral that I'm going to stop doing this, because I'm starting to get really known as this little person character, and it's first offensive to little people, and it's also, but also, you know, it was a joke that I got from Martin Lawrence and Tim Conway and all the other people who put shoes on their feet and made themselves look shorter. But at the same time, I knew I was getting known for that. Like, people still call me Mini. Still, 15 years later, they still call me Mini Pacquiao sometimes, you know, but that was the goal. It's always been the goal. Filipino American comedy that could be on SNL or on The Daily Show or any other American comedy show, where it's funny to Filipinos, but it's also funny to Filipino Americans, and it's also funny to Americans. It's funny to everybody. So that's been my goal the whole time. So, and in my special, Miscellaneous Brown, where I say, you know, I talk about how the audience is all Filipino, in this new special that was filmed at the Comedy Plex just recently, very few Filipinos showed up because Lucky was working with Joe Biden, so I couldn't get my seat filler guy. My co-producer wasn't helping me sell tickets, so I only sold. I mean, it was still good crowds, and it was still pretty packed out, so it was still a good show, but it wasn't sold out, and it wasn't packed, and it wasn't Filipinos. It was mostly white folks and black folks, which was awesome for me.
Yeah,
because, you know, to do some of the Tagalog stuff and to recall and do some of the other, you know, like almost like I wanted to have a connective tissue between all my specials. If they're going to be filmed, I wanted a connective tissue. So some of the jokes that really hit the first special, and I know because they're just jokes that people have already, either it's already went viral or it's, you know, people talk to me about how they're their favorite jokes. I'm going to bring them back a little bit. Yeah. But the only one thing that I didn't do in Unemployable, which I'll probably do in the next one, and I'll start working on with shows that I'm doing, so you'll probably want to come see the live show, is I wanted to bring Tito Chito back. But Tito Chito, because I wanted to bring Tito, because I want everybody to know that Tito Chito is a fictional character. Tito Chito he is Homie the Clown. He is a sketch character that I created at the Groundlings, and he's just an older Filipino ladies' man, right? And
still very real to a lot of us. The way that you presented him, like he sounded very, very unfortunately familiar to a lot of us. So,
well, that was the point, right? And so I love him. I love him because he allows me to say things that I don't say. All right, I won't say. You know what I'm saying? Like he gives me a little bit of a pass to be a little bit more politically incorrect, right? Because he's an older Filipino gentleman that doesn't give a fuck about what he says. He just wants to get his point across. So, but I wanted to do that and do a review of what happened when my dad and I sat down and watched Easter Sunday.
Yeah. No,
because the stuff that my dad said during that shit was hilarious. Hilarious. It's that's the best, oh my right? God, it was hilarious. You meant to tell me that they live in Los Angeles, but they never tried Halo Halo? What the fuck? Are you crazy? God almighty. How does that even work? I've been in Chicago and I've already tried LA Halo Halo maybe the first week. What's wrong with you? I mean, even just like my dad was like doing script analysis when we were watching that shit. But,
what was the obviously it was amazing. You loved it, but what was the biggest difference for you in the audience and seeing the predominantly Filipino versus the very mixed audience? What are the basic and the eye opening differences in seeing those crowds? And I know that you've seen them for years and years, but for these specials specifically, if we're going to compare the two, what were the feelings like in the two audiences that you experienced for these film specials? Well, what did it feel like between Filipinos and non-Filipinos?
it's very simple. Miscellaneous Brown, my first special, showed me that yeah, you can do this, right? And the new one, Unemployable, it was like, oh, you're good at this shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Very simple answer, because that's the distinction between the two specials. Because you can do good, you can get a standing ovation in a room full of Filipinos doing really good Filipino American material, which is what Miscellaneous Brown is. But when I did Unemployable, I wrote that shit in like 3 months. And I wrote a lot of different jokes that I did where we were walking the streets of Chicago, and I wrote jokes that day that I tried let me try and open this. My best friend Joel, who has been with me since day one for every production that I've ever done, even to like Neo the musical and all the stuff that I did in Chicago. He's been my homie, and he was my best man at my wedding, and he got mad at me after the first night of Unemployable, because he was like, motherfucker, why did you ask how much time you had left? And I was like, bitch, because I didn't know because I normally have timed out all these jokes in my head. So I know that this joke is 5 minutes, or this joke is 10 minutes, or I can stretch this joke to 15 minutes or whatever it is. But with some of the newer material, I didn't know how long that shit was. And I was riffing because I had the crowd for as long as I had the crowd. So some of the stuff I didn't even like, I can almost like, I normally remember like almost like a dialogue in my head of like what I said and did on especially for a special. But for that first night, I was freestyling in a lot of ways, but I loved it. But that was part of what proved to me that I was like, man, I just did 45 minutes and I just went off the cuff. I didn't even prepare. I didn't even smoke a joint before the show. Damn. But you know what? Like, it was a really eye-opening for me, because I was like, wow. And this crowd is primarily, that first night, it was primarily white. So the idea that I had them, and they were into my performance, and they were into all the other comics too. It reassured me that, I was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Speaking of 45 minutes, we are almost at 45 minutes. So I want to end with a couple
I
of
can
questions.
talk forever, bro. I don't know why you thought you could interview me and keep it. Hey, bro, if you have any other questions, just ask. We can always go an hour. It don't matter. Yeah. If you have
this is the beauty of the podcast. But I'm going to turn this kind of selfishly, because I'm going to ask for myself, and hopefully this helps other people. But I want to ask some questions about your advice, right? And I want to know, as a comedian, what advice would you give to an aspiring writer, stand-up comedian, improviser, whatever person comes out of this and has the same goal as you, to bring light into this world, to make somebody laugh at the end of the day, and just spark that within them? What's your advice for somebody who's starting out in the world of comedy?
I think about this question a lot because I get it asked a lot, but at the same time, the best advice I would ever give to a comedian, other than, go take improv classes and, write jokes every day and all the stuff that everybody says, but live life. Don't just think about auditions. Do theater, do improvise, be obsessed with your craft, but at the same time, live life and have other things that you have in your life that can you can escape the grind, which I know is in the brain because I know how my brain works. You know, I have to smoke a lot of cannabis to the point where I grow my own, but at the same time, that hobby is in a lot of ways that learning how to grow my own cannabis and something that's not comedy. You know what I'm saying? It's not anything. It's just solely for myself. It's very selfish almost, but it's my hobby, and it allows me to share with everybody who partakes. But also, it's like reconnects me to nature. You know, it allows me to reminds me how small I am. You know, in relation to the universe, in relation to even just the earth that we live on, and how we have to take care of it, and you know, the power that is generated just from the soil. You know, all these different things that kind of ground me. Those are things that, you know, it's like live your life, do things that you enjoy doing just for the sake of doing them. And if there's something that you like and it'll help you, like in the case of me, where I can, you know, I found a great hobby in something that now saves me a shit ton of money, so I don't have to go to the dispensary, then great. But at the same time, it really has, you know, allowed me to do all these things. Now I don't worry about the fact that, you know, I'm just going to keep podcasting, you know, and keep performing and keep putting it out there, because it's going to keep eventually, you know, however many seeds you plant, one of them bitches is going to sprout, and it's going to get really big, and it's going to be, you're going to be smoking it for months, and it's all good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Speaking of these seeds, which of these do you see kind of uh, growing within the next 5 years? Like, which ones do you see as being one that you're most excited about to see? You know, are you gonna do more podcasts? Do you see yourself doing more specials? Is there a sitcom in your future? Like all these other things. What are you most excited about of the seeds that you're planting right now?
Um, but you know, because you asked me this in our little questionnaire back and forth before this episode, and I started thinking about the next 5 years, and I've been thinking about the next 5 years for the past almost 30 years. You know what I'm saying? And part of me, if there's another good advice I would have to any upcoming artist, is enjoy the moment that you're in right now. And yes, all the things that we're doing, this podcast with you, Miscellaneous and Brown, and the election coming up, and you know, our plans for hopefully the DNC in August in Chicago, and all the other things that are coming up are brilliant and lovely and awesome. But I know everything, especially because of when I bring it back to growing, everything's a cycle, you know, and for me, if we are consistent and steady and keep bringing our message out and keep talking about the things that we want to talk about in this podcast and in the other podcast that I do with Mitch, the Kanakuya podcast, I mean, in the next 5 years, I can see us becoming, you know, I want to be one of those people in the Filipino American community that they go to for comedy. There's room for all of us. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to push anybody out of the way or compete with anybody. It's more about, this is my gig, my style. You know, I'm trying to, you know, a little politics, a little philosophy, a little more depth, but at the same time, I still want to keep you laughing and keeping you smiling, and you know, as long as I'm making my kids laugh and my wife go, "Oh, please God, don't say that." I'm good, man. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I'm good.
Oh no, I know that look. I know that look very, very well. Love making my son laugh, but yeah, knowing that my wife is gonna roll her eyes or rub her head because I said something, that means, you know,
Oh
that's
my
her way of
God, what are Matita's gonna think when this fool? I'm
the
actually,
worst.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the worst thing is no reaction from your partner, right? If they just walk away or whatever, it's one thing to be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed," but it's another one. It's like they're just silent, and walk away. It's like, all right, then I didn't do anything. I didn't elicit any reaction. So yeah, that's
No, as long as I shock my wife, as long as my wife is like, oh, oh, why would you? Oh, I know I got fire. I know I have fire. And then
yes,
Marley's like giggling,
yeah.
giggling. because Daddy said dick again.
Yeah. She's already writing the next joke in her head thanks to you. She's like, all right. Inspiring.
She's like,
Inspiring
okay,
her.
I see what it is. You don't really have to say anything funny. Just stress the word dick. People will laugh. Okay, I'm gonna write that down. That's all Daddy does.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, no, this is great, and I think your audience, our audience, is just gonna like just absorb this and know you better. And moving forward, we want to make sure that like we're on the same page as you, and like we grow this audience because you align with so many people that listen to this. You're representing the Filipino community so well. And taking this break to make sure that we hear from you while you get to interview all these other amazing people. It's going to be it's a nice segue to the next 5 years and everything else that you're going to be doing, because you've done so much already, and how this enhances everything that you're going to be doing. I'm glad that we're able to take some time, take this moment, and learn more about you as we get more guests to get on here, and you get to learn about them and share them with the world. So
right on, man.
Thank you.
Bro, I appreciate you, brother. I it goes without saying, man. I like you're gonna be. I said this to Joel today when I was talking to him, because I'm not saying I'm planning for the next 5 years, but I can see I've been surfing for a minute on these waves, and I know when a wave is coming. So, at my most, I'd say, seasoned would be a good word.
Yeah.
Because it's been good and it's been bad. But in my most seasoned position, as far as in my acting and comedy career, I feel like, I'm most poised to level up and just get my message out there and share my story. So, and you are an essential part of that, and you've been an essential part of that for a long time, bro. So I appreciate you, and if you like what you're hearing, you should subscribe to this YouTube account, but also you should give us a nice rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the other, wherever you're listening to this. If you review the podcast, you will help us get to more ears and maybe more eyes if you're watching this on YouTube. So, hit that like button, share it if you want to get this message out, and share it with other people. And I appreciate you, brother. So we'll schedule for next week's episode that will be coming soon, and there'll be some guests that are we have planned for y'all, that it's going to be exciting, and you'll be able to stay informed. And also, shout out to the Isabel Jurado campaign. I'll be co-hosting an event for them I think it'll probably be when this podcast comes out. So June, I'll double check. So follow me on Instagram at Erick Esteban Comedy, and follow Chris at Chris Mayo Mateo on Instagram. And you will get the info if you want to be a part of that and want to watch that and support that event. That I'm going to be co-hosting for Isabel Jurado, the first Filipina to be running for LA City Council. And she's an awesome lady that, if you want to, what episode is that? I think like episode 3 or 4. You can go back to episode 3 or 4 of this podcast, and you can listen to my interview with Isabel, and you can get her whole story, because it was awesome. Amazing. It's a great episode. And she's a really great lady, and I'm going to be doing her event as well. So again, thank you, Chris. I really do appreciate you. And it's cool that you asked me these questions, because it allows me to kind of think about my future.
Then my job is done. I've set us on that path. So this is amazing. So thank you so much for everything, and let's keep it going.
All right, brother. Cool. Peace, y'all.
What you got? One, here we go. You can see the size is colossal. Look at the way she make the thing go. Make it gyrate, make it shake like tectonic press. That's what you call an earthquake. Hey, make it gyrate, make it shake like tectonic press. That's what you call an earthquake. Hey, it's summertime, starting up a heat wave, and now all weekend. every days. Whoever's driving the car's the DJ. When it's Q, you better pump that bass. The dominance is obvious, I guillotine, heads roll, everywhere I go I rep Philippines. Found my way, turn amaze to amazing. Infinite flows discovered in an ancient spaceship. I see things before they happen, visionary. Bury me inside a studio at the cemetery. My modus operandi not monetary. Noah Lazarus, the holy one out the monastery. So let me see your cue, plus the Y, that's the crew. I'm a giant, how I grew, still connected to my roots. Rhymes, I kick it like Bruce, got me feeling like Zeus. Standing tall like Manu, to reach this level need a boost. I don't think you want any problems, but you got one, here we go. You can see the size is colossal. Look at the way she make the thing go. Make it gyrate, make it shake like tectonic plates. That's what you call an earthquake, ayy. Make it gyrate, make it shake like tectonic plates. That's what you call an earthquake, ayy. Smoother than Brazilian wax, that's interact. My life a cinematic reflection in the mirror max. With the pros, I'm proliferating. She said my syntax sounds so scintillating. Flavormatics on the beat, savory. Being scared, still doing it, that's bravery. Hunger turn us into savages. Ain't nobody give us nothing, had to do it alone, without a loan. Like Norfolk, Queens, Aquafina had the shell toe. Adidas used to hang with the drug dealers. Been doing this since cassette tapes in my Walkman, writing rhymes on the subway. Traditions I carry on, hip hop scholar, mastered in the street. Science, raw diamonds, I'm refined. With the stars in alignment, got the youth to the truth. On a tree of knowledge, squeeze forbidden fruit and made it juice. I don't think you want any problems, but you got one, here we go. You can see the size is colossal. Look at the way she make the thing go. Make it gyrate, make it shake like tectonic plates. That's what you call an earthquake, ayy. Make it gyrate, make it shake like tectonic plates. That's what you call an earthquake, ayy. I just wanna dance all night, wanna dance all night, wanna dance all night with you. I just wanna dance all night, wanna dance all night, wanna dance all night with you.